Hello, everyone. Well, if I were to tell you that a giant corporation that is nothing short of omnipresent in your life had an agenda, well, if I told you that that giant corporation had its own ideas on how the world should work and who should be in charge, and leveraged its huge presence in your life to make that reality. Not only that, they're doing it in such a subtle way, appealing to such base levels of human psychology that you don't even know they're doing it. This isn't some nightmarish dystopian reality. This isn't a story from a sci-fi novel. It's November 2020, and this is exactly what Google has done in the presidential elections in 2020. You're watching Political, and today we're going to be talking about a new study that reveals that Google was encouraging and reminding potentially millions of liberals to vote, whilst not reminding one single conservative. Please do subscribe, like, and comment. We really want to build a great community and hope that you all stick around and participate in the great conversations we have below. Many interesting conversations. And if you do drop us a like as well, it does help us with the algorithm. So with no further ado, we're going to move straight on into that study. Ryan.
Yeah. So obviously, as probably a lot of people remember, there was a hearing with the Senate, a Senate hearing, judiciary hearing, where they had the CEOs of Google and Twitter and Facebook, and they came on and they said, no, listen, we're not doing anything untoward. We're definitely not interfering in the election. And Sundar Pichai, the guy who is the CEO of Alphabet that owns Google, said that we don't do anything, to politically tilt anything one way or another. Well, that could very well be perjury now, it seems, after this new evidence has surfaced itself. So there's a guy called Robert Epstein. That's a kind of unfortunate name to have right now, but he is a psychologist who has a PhD from Harvard. So this guy's not a quack. This isn't some conspiracy theory. He's ran a study to determine the extent of bias in Google to a certain extent anyway. So he had hundreds of field agents or thousands of field agents who were logging and documenting their experiences with Google. And he made this stark discovery that he, between the 26th and 29th of October, the 733 field agents in Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina were able to preserve more than 400,000 ephemeral experiences that tech companies use to shift opinions and votes that normally are lost forever. One of the most disturbing findings is that between the Monday and Thursday, October 26th to 29th, only their liberal field agents received vote reminders on Google's homepage. Conservatives did not receive a single vote reminder. Epstein said in a report to the censors, this kind of targeting, if present nationwide, could shift millions of votes, in part because Google's homepage is seen 500 million times a day in the US. PG Media said the pattern had disappeared on October the 29th. Epstein sent materials about the project to the New York Post. They wrote a story on it. Late that evening, the Post pulled down the article, and in his study, they noticed that the targeting had stopped, that they stopped doing it, and suddenly his conservative people were receiving vote reminders as well. And this isn't the first time that Epstein's spoken about this. He said back in 2017, he was on Tucker Carlson. His claim, and quite a bold claim, he said that without the pro-Clinton bias in in Google's search results, her win margin in the popular vote would have been negligible. He thinks that they have the potential to swing 15 million votes, which sounds extreme, but then you remember that Americans see the Google homepage and use Google, I think, 400 million times a day or something crazy like that. And then obviously you amplify that over days, over a whole election cycle, and it doesn't actually sound that extreme anymore. So the Senate have called the CEO back anyway, and they said to him, we'll be asking Dr. Epstein to provide Congress with evidence of Google's politically biased activities he's monitoring collected during this election cycle. We are writing to provide you another opportunity to conduct a thorough review with your management team to determine the veracity of your previous responses to the congressional inquiry regarding this issue and correct your answers if necessary. So the bottom line is they've been caught.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, I'm not even sure. The scary thing here is I'm not even sure where the bias is coming from, because in theory, okay, it doesn't have to come straight from the top, does it? You don't have to be Sundar Pichai in order to be making these, in order to be turning Google into this machine of electoral interference, okay? Because all it requires is a small section of society, a small, let's say you have 5 people in an office and they're all radical Democrats, and these people happen to be, dealing with the certain algorithms and stuff. It could just be them, okay? What do we know about Google's employees? Well, they're university educated, so they're more likely to be from a rich background. They all live in Silicon Valley, California. These are the most liberal people on earth, and they're at the reins of all the most influential tools ever created, ever. So when you recall Sundar in front of Congress and you question him, he could very reasonably turn around and say, "Oh well, I don't know anything about it," because it's plausible deniability. What we need to do is, in these big tech firms, first of all, they need to be broken up because they have monopolies, and that's bad for business. Okay, but second of all, what we need to do is a massive audit, go through the entire company, and just work out, because there's no safeguards and there's no checks and balances, and that's why we have a situation today where we have millions and millions of liberals being encouraged to vote and not one single conservative. It's utterly dystopian, this kind of thing, don't you think?
Yeah, certainly. What you raised there as well is you raise an interesting philosophical point with regards to these companies and what we should do about them. I mean, you've made it clear what your what your opinions are and what should be done. I just want to say as well, though, you talked about it's not necessarily an order from the top of Google, right? Say, oh, we need to push Biden or push Clinton or whatever. Like you say, it's because they're mostly liberals working in the company. And there was a whistleblower from Project Veritas who said that Google are intentionally biased, and that more than 90% of political contributions from workers at Google are Democrats. And why? Because we've seen this. And to be honest, we've spoken about this. I mean, not us personally, but it's been spoken about for years now. This idea that if you see this infiltration of the education systems by this woke agenda, then that will trickle down into all of our other institutions in society, because it's those educated elites that end up taking over all the powerful positions. And if they've gone through university for 4 years or whatever, experiencing only this woke agenda, this woke way of doing things, of identity politics and cancel culture and all this kind of thing, that becomes the norm to them, and that bias then becomes implicit in the work that they do, and then maybe they don't realize that they're doing it. Like, the thing is, and we've seen this amplified with Donald Trump, this doesn't become just a Democrat Republican partisan kind of work that they're doing. It's more like with Donald Trump, it's really easy to rationalize it for what they're doing, because they're like, oh well, maybe I shouldn't technically do this, but Donald Trump's just so evil that it's okay. So you see that institutions now, but then the other point is, what do we do about it? Because it is a free world, and Google are a private company. Some people might argue, well, if you're a libertarian or if you're a classical liberal or whatever, they're just a company. It's up to them if they want to do that. But I just think it raises this kind of weird gray area where we're like, well, yeah, typically that's the case, but technology now means that this company has so much influence and power. Are they a special case? Same with Twitter and Facebook. Are they a special case? Do we need special law just for these companies if this is what they're doing? I really don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I mean, it goes back to your first point, doesn't it? Because what we need to do is we need to root out this the word for it is a cancer. We need to root it out in the education system, as you say. And just going back to your first point, when you have when you go to university and you're getting these professors delivering you these kind of woke sermons, okay, and that's what they are, because you're not really allowed to question them. You just have to go into your, I don't know, history class, and they'll sit you down and they'll say, okay, let's talk about how white people are bad. That's the first thing you'll learn, okay? So that becomes, by definition, the educated opinion, okay? But if you've worked hard all your life and you haven't been to university because you can't afford hundreds of thousands of dollars, then you technically have an uneducated opinion, don't you? But it doesn't have anything to do with the knowledge base from which you're drawing your conclusions. It has to do with the technical definition of it. And what those liberals do is they dismiss the so-called uneducated opinions because it's uneducated, right? They not only do you have the woke agenda, but it's combined with this arrogance and this kind of refusal to see, my opinion's better than yours. And it's proliferated through that. And like we said, what do we do about it? Or, I think one of the most critical things that Donald Trump did that could potentially have a shattering effect on this was to destroy the critical race theory and to remove it from American education. Because, of course, shouldn't be growing up in societies where we're self-hating and how we learn about how terrible we are. When we fought for democracy all those times, but we're the bad guys of history. It's utterly ridiculous. And like I say, when you go through that university system, you are far more likely to have a job that influences other people. Google draws its staff exclusively from this group of liberal elites. The media draws its staff exclusively from this group of liberal elites. It just self-propagates, doesn't it? You were talking about, like you said with Google, 500 million views of the homepage every day. Really scary just how much damage these people can do.
Well, I think the word that comes to mind when you say these things is elitism. They're an elite group. And it's interesting because before Donald Trump, the narrative among the liberal elite, and I call it the liberal elite, I mean, basically the term is synonymous with lots of other terms that you hear in other countries. We have them here. I probably didn't call them the liberal elite, but just like champagne socialists or whatever. All of these are the same group of people, the people who have had, middle-class lifestyle, gone to university, I say highly educated. I don't know if that's necessarily always the case, but they have. It used to be before Donald Trump that the attitude was that anyone that disagreed with them was either not racist, but greedy or stupid, right? Or they're just uneducated poor people and they don't know what's best for them, or they're just actually really greedy and they just want, tax decreases for themselves and they don't care about anyone else. And then Donald Trump comes along and I feel like that narrative still exists, but then this new narrative existed. I mean, it already existed, but it just amplified and it was like, well, no, now you're actually, if you're right wing, you're actually just now like evil and racist. And it's just kind of interesting to see the change there that's happened. Will it disappear with Donald Trump if he doesn't become president? I don't know. I don't know if that will continue on. I imagine the next guy that comes along will probably just be cast in the same light now. Oh, this guy's actually literally Hitler as well. That last guy was literally Hitler, but this guy's like literally Hitler times 2. But yeah, like you say, they're the elite and they've taken over all of these institutions. But what's interesting is, not just because their opinion is just because you're conservative, you're stupid. Obviously, that's completely not the case. There are many very well-educated conservatives. The reality is, though, they're just not choosing to seek employment in these institutions. There's many rich conservatives, obviously, but they're just going down a different pathway. But that kind of side of life, people, entrepreneurs who start businesses or whatever and do this kind of thing or become self-employed, whatever it is that they do, those people are no longer being represented anymore. They don't have that voice. They don't have that same platform that the liberals do. And this is why you see now this big divide in society. It's been amplified by the technology that we have. because
Yeah,
their voice has been it's like they've got this, you know, giant big megaphone that they just get to speak out to across the internet, that everyone has to hear what they think, and all of their implicit biases sneak into all of the things that we see, all the media, you know, and every time we interact with Facebook and Twitter and Google and all of those things, they're a part of life now. These companies are so huge, and Amazon as well, that they're a part of life. It's not just a case of, oh, well, you know, avoid them. You can't avoid them. So
no, you're absolutely right. And just kind of just two things, just whilst we're wrapping up. First of all, when I said educated, I should have, you know, made it very clear I was doing quotation marks, but I just realised you couldn't see the quotation marks I was doing. And second of all, just kind of bring it back to an example from real life. So, well, I guess real life for me. So I obviously used to work in the European Parliament, and it's exactly the same. You see, everyone has a liberal bias. Okay, that's just kind of accepted. It's the norm here. So, how do you think government operates when the entire staff base that's informing its MEPs, that's making decisions, when they're not going off objective data analysis, they're going off liberal political points? Okay, it filters through society like you wouldn't believe. You know, it's like a sieve, okay? And all the conservative opinions, all the people who've had experience of life, all the people who've had to fight hard to get to where they are, they did, like you said, they don't get represented. And all it is these kind of self-assured liberals, normally coming from very rich families, normally don't have any like hardship in life, and they just come through. They don't have to think about anything. They don't have to challenge their bias, but they go straight through to government. And they go straight through to the tech firms and the media industries. Awful. We really need to change that. But anyway, I'm going to let you wrap up now.
yeah, I was just gonna say it's interesting because my experience from university, and you know, it was a few years ago now, but I'm trying to think, like 6 years ago, 5 years ago. I didn't really see any of this wokeism. There were woke people at the university, but like rationality broadly seemed to overrule it. You know, there wasn't that much talk about politics. I expected, fully going to university, there was going to be lots of talk about politics. I guess it's just some institutions more than others, but I do think that it's expanding now. And it's expanding to the point that it is becoming a huge issue when you have just one political opinion widely represented in all of these, you know, giant institutions. So listen, it's an interesting topic. There's so much to talk about, and you know, the answers and the solutions are kind of even more complex. And I don't know. Like, I'm really torn between all these different ideas of how to deal with the situation. I think what's the positive here is that it's being called out, and people are aware of what's going on. And as people become aware, maybe then the overriding factor will become money. And these firms will be forced to change the way that they operate. Otherwise, they're going to lose revenue. They're going to lose income because, like it or not, 50% of the population, roughly, thereabouts, tend to be a bit more right-wing. 50% tend to be a bit more left-wing. So that's the way it goes. You cannot, you know, turn off 50% of your audience straight away. So who knows? Maybe the market will resolve this all for us, and that would be great. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you've made it this far into our ramblings, and as always, please do consider subscribing if you enjoy the content. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.